So let's that's a nice lead into what we're going to be talking about. I hope some of you found that a little interesting in terms of the things that happen in in nature. Really interesting stuff. Now I hear that those wasps that can really it really hurts, from what I understand from scientists who've been studying them. So we'll be taking a look, and we'll touch back on the bee situation again, okay? But just to give you an example of what's going on there in terms of community. So we're gonna be looking at community ecology, and here we go, here are the bees, right? That's what we were talking about earlier before we do our nice little chat before the lecture. These are the greatest pollinators of all time. There is nothing better than this. The hummingbird does not come close. Little ladybugs don't even compare to the level of pollination of these particular honeybees. Now, keep in mind that the killer bee I have experience with this. This is where I'm coming from. I'm not reading some comic book or some PowerPoint here, guys. I live here in South Texas. For those who are on YouTube wondering, well, where is this guy talking? South Texas, look up the map for killer bees and you'll find that we are in that red zone area where we are in the Southwest Texas area. They love this environment, and I encounter killer bees every year. Now, just a little FYI, if you study how they fly, if you study how they fly the honeybee versus the killer bees, the honeybees kind of fly more in a calmer fashion. The killer bees fly in an erratic fashion. They're moving on kind of on zigzagging corners. They're very erratic, very erratic. I have seen a nest, and of course it was in a large oak tree way up there. So I was looking and I could hear the roar. Most likely, I'm like, oh man, that's the killer bees, man. Down by the Nueces River, they love the river area. I could hear that. Oh man, I'm like, it's a good chance. And I kept looking at it, and guess what? I got my confirmation. How? A bird flew nearby where they were hanging out through, and all I saw was that bird flap its wings and move and juke and everything, and it went up into the sky. Why? Do any of you guys know why? What do you think happened to that bird?
Did it die?
No, it didn't die, but what do you think the bird was doing instead of flap? Why do you think he was doing this?
Oh, he got stung. Or the
Yeah, he was getting stung. He passed by. Hey, they went at him. I can't see that. I can't see that from the distance away up there. I can't see little bees flying. Like, I don't have eyes of a hawk. So, but I can see a bird, and the bird way up there in huge oak trees flying, zigzagging all over the place, and then goes straight up and to get away. So yeah, aggressive. So I knew at that point, I had my confirmation that those were killer bees. So they do not like noise. They do not like noise. You must be careful. Okay, you must be careful. Do not, when you mow an area, your backyard, they could be in your backyard. They could have found something. I don't know. This could be a little barn here. Walk around your home. Just don't turn on the lawnmower and just, or the weed whacker, and just going whacking at it. Take some time. Walk around your area. First, look, make sure you don't have anything on the ground that's going to stick you. Little pieces of metal wiring. You don't want that. It could break your lawnmower, but worse, it could even hurt you. Right? You don't want that. Or you could hurt someone else. If you're using a weed whacker, it's going to fling it and hit some little kid and you're across the fence. Like, so go check your area and listen to your environment. Get off your phone, walk around, and scout the area real quick. Give it a few minutes, depending on the size. Hey, it doesn't take a situation on here nearby the Crystal City public swimming pool, not at the swimming pool, but across the swimming pool. The city was doing some stuff. They were cleaning the sidewalks, and guess what? You know where they were at? city of Crystal City, and they started chasing them, stinging all the workers. They had a nest right where you have a sidewalk, you have your gutter, the water flows right underneath, right? They had it there. We don't get a lot of rain. So they went under there, right underneath the concrete. It's nice, kind of underground, cool, shady. They stay hydrated. They were under there. Here comes a guy. Ear protection, comes in with a weed eater, boom, goes over that area, weed eating the sidewalk. The city, the part that the city owns. And long and behold, they all come out of that gutter area, and they were running and trying to get into people's houses, jumping in people's cars. It was a real situation. It happened recently. I believe it happened last year. So keep those things in mind when we do those type of stuff. It can happen. It can happen. Now, again, and I'll be writing some of these up. This is additional knowledge. Now, if you really want your situation and you're wondering, how am I going to get, let's say you have a tree by your house and you figured out those are killer bees. How are you going to get rid of them? Well, you will most likely want to call someone a professional. However, if you do have experience and you do have a bee suit and you know how to suit up, your best option is soapy water. Not some sort of insecticide, nothing like that. Soapy water. And that will bring them down. We don't have the time to get into the toxicological mechanism behind it, but it really does not do well. So again, greatest pollinators of all time. They're considered a keystone species. What are keystone species in the community and why are they pollinators considered? Ancient civilizations have even built and have markings in stone of the bee. Many generations ago knew the importance of the bee. You want to get a little more closer into time, the Native Americans of our great country here in the United States understood the importance of bees and pollinations. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the Native Americans understood genetics, not to the level that we understand genetics now, but they understood it from the terms of plant breeding. They were pretty darn good at it, and they began to dabble in making crosses with different plants to yield larger maize, corn, right? What are food chains? Forget about that. Let's go straight into the webs. We don't deal with the food chain. We're going to go into the food web. Again, it's a thing I don't like. There is no such thing. And it's a highly complicated world that we live in. There is no linear. There is nothing that is linear. Everything is it's almost like multiverse. It's multi variables involved of abiotic and biotic factors that affect the ecosystem. So we're not going to dabble into a chain, not going to do it. How does energy flow through these entire food webs? What kinds of interactions occur among members in the community, and how do these influence the structure of the community? Very, very good stuff. I have considered doing this. I have considered starting my own bee colonies, not for honey. Yes, I have eaten honey. I have eaten honey straight off, broken off from the nest. And it's great. And then you make this is wax. And then you roll it up into wax and you could save it and make a candle out of it, whatever. Like, it's pretty interesting stuff. But I have had natural honey from here. And in the Midwest, if you go like in the quote, like the HEB, they're called Hy-Vees. Like the HEB of let's say Iowa is known as a Hy-Vee. And you go there in the Hy-Vee area, the Hy-Vee food store, they offer you, I mean, it's expensive, but they'll offer the actual, some of them call it comb, nest, whatever you want to call it. They'll offer that you can buy it there. It's approved and everything. And you can eat honey straight off of that. And they make good money off that. Here's some data from 2014 and 2015, the annual loss of managed honeybee colonies. Oh, the losses, annual losses of managed honeybee colonies by the state. Yeah, so you can see that, look, this is the light area. Now this over here area, I believe that's, don't quote me, ladies and gentlemen, but over here in the Washington area, that is where that large wasp we were talking about, I believe, don't quote me. I thought this is where they first found it, over here towards Seattle, Washington area. I don't know, this is California, I could be wrong. And again, I don't mind stating the things that I'm uncertain about. So, but we can see here, oh man, kind of like up in the Oklahoma area, you know, Kansas area getting hit here. Yeah, I don't know why over here this area was being hit hard, way up here. What happened over here? I'd like to know what's happening over here. This is more cooler areas. Was it in 2014 that they have a hard freeze over here in the Iowa or here in Minnesota area? What's going on over here? What happened? I don't know. I don't know. They don't give us that information yet, but something happened. Something drastic happened. And notice how it's isolated right here, but going up to 60% loss, more than half, brutal, brutal. So it could have been a very hard freeze, right? We experienced a hard freeze here. And like I said, it's going to affect the tick and flea populations, which is a good thing. Like those fleas, they got a rude awakening when they woke up and they were surrounded by snow. Oh boy, most did not make it. And the only ones that made it were the ones that were already on the animals. So the population is going to decline, which is a great thing, right? Flea and tick populations, we don't need that. So actually, going back is our hard freeze, and talking about biology is what we do. And we like to think outside the box. We may have a very healthy population of deer and wild pigs. Why? Well, two factors. Any of the really weak ones in our hard freeze that we had here died. Boom, done. They were weak. If they were diseased, they didn't make it. The ones that survived were more healthy and were able to survive their fatty storage. Now, pigs probably have a natural wild boar pigs, right? Spanish marranos. Those have a higher probability of survival than deer. Why? Because of their physiology. They are able to burrow more and more into ground to stay warmer. Deer don't do that. Deer don't burrow and make large holes. They don't. I can see the differences between where a deer sleeps and where a pig sleeps. A pig can wallow and kind of get in a little bit and have some warmth. Another thing is pigs usually travel in larger groups, so then they have each other warmth. But what's also going to contribute to the health of that population is that, like we studied in the moose population in Alaska, fleas and ticks do possess diseases, which can reduce the health of an individual animal or a group of animals. So having the hard freeze is going to reduce the flea and tick population, therefore allowing a healthier population, which was already pre-existing because the healthy population survived the hard freeze. So what we see this next deer season, right? This next winter, what we see, they are going to be the survivors of that hard freeze. So there will be most likely a very healthy population. And very good to consume. So you want organic? 100% organic, wild deer and wild pigs in the state of Texas, ladies and gentlemen. Community, ecology, that's what we're talking about. Let's get a little bit into this and then we'll dive into some pollinators. So pollen, small, thick-walled plant structures that contain cells and develop into sperm, right? We talked about male plants, female plants. Look at this guy. Look at that honeybee. She's having a good old time going into the flower, getting all that pollen on them. Look at that. That is a great pollinator. Let's go back. Look at that. Wow. Just having a ball with the pollen. I don't have my mouse, so sorry. Okay. Pollination, transfer the pollen from a male plant to a female plant structures. So fertilization can occur. We're going to look at some pollinator diversities, right? We're going to take a quick look at that. There is a diversity within the pollinators. Flowering plants attract pollinators with their colorful flowers and their fragrant nectar. Some of them have colorful flowers, some of them don't. Some of them don't have colorful flowers, but they have amazing fragrance that attract them. Hello, have you guys ever been out in a park and you open up a soda and then the bees are coming around it? Why? They smell this sugar-like substance, right? And some of these have sugar like sweet. Here, look, hey, someone I think in this class said they have a hummingbird feeder. Who said they had a hummingbird feeder?
I do.
Okay, right, Laura, that that hummingbird, it's a liquid, right?
Yes, it's like a red syrup.
It's a red syrupy,
Or
right?
liquid.
There you go. And it has sugar, some sugars in it. And sugars drive ATP. And those little hummingbirds, they need a lot of adenosine triphosphate. They need so much of it. Their little wings are just flapping like crazy. So when you pop open a soda can, I'm assuming most soda cans have sugar. I don't know. I don't really drink soda much unless I'm having a really hard time, meaning hard time, but I'm exhausted. I might buy a Mountain Dew or Dr. Pepper or something of that nature to boost up some caffeine if I don't have access maybe to a cup of coffee. Because usually sodas actually contain way more caffeine than a cup of coffee. But we won't get into dietary food nutrition stuff. When a pollinator such as a bee visits a flower to collect energy rich sugar, right? Nectar, energy in the form of it's going to be in sugar and then eventually ATP. It also picks up some of the pollen. When it visits another flower, the pollen is transferred to that flower. That's what I was trying to tell Laura in terms of her peach tree, helping the plant to reproduce. Variety of animal pollinate plants that are important for agriculture and natural communities. So here we have the nice little beautiful monarch butterfly, we have the dragonfly, and we have some bats, you know, beautiful hummingbirds, and we have the bee, and this is the champion of all pollinators. Okay, 75% of flowering plants or angiosperms are dependent upon insect pollinators. That is how come, again, going back to Laura's thing, when we talked about the peach tree and the freeze and the pollination or tree growing and everything, I was like, and it was flowering and now it is producing, like, what was it? What was it that was pollinating that peach tree? I don't know. Who knows? But whatever the heck it was, it survived that hard freeze. That's for sure. And whatever it was, did a pretty darn good job. That's all.
I was trying to think about like other pollinators that would come into play. And I also have like this it's like a vine that grows on my fence right next to the tree where I have, and it grows pink flowers. And a lot of butterflies go inside there. And sometimes my dad gets rid of it, but like we've left it there. So I don't know if that came into play as well.
I do think that has something to play. You're right. And I think I know which vine you're talking about. I don't know the name of it, but I have an idea of what it looks like. And you're right. If it's the vine I'm thinking about, man, lots of it attracts a lot of things, even hummingbirds. So if it's near that tree, I mean, it doesn't have to be up on the tree, but within proximity of it, it's very likely that you brought in this pool of or population of pollinators, and there you had, that's how your little tree was able to get pollinated. It's very possible. Good observation. So stone species on which other species depend on. Look at this. Let's take a look at that right here. Well, let's go to the community first. A group of interacting populations of different species living together in the same area. That's what we were discussing before the recording. Those who were like, what was he talking about? before the recording, I always ask the students a little chit chat, open it up to just little questions, and then we start recording at the beginning of the presentation. It's one of the advantages of coming to lectures. So we've pretty much got a good grasp of what community is. So now let's get into a keystone species. So bees are, this image here with these stones is very important because they are in the hierarchy. Without this, you don't have flowers, you don't have any fruits, the fruits and birds. And again, I'm not trying to do a darn food chain here. This is just a rough saying, hey, look at this image and look that the pollinator is the key stone to the foundation of an ecosystem. And when you take that stone out, that keystone out, the foundation collapses. The ecosystem collapses. I'm not going to go in depth like, okay, this little thing that makes this flower, and then we can say this, we can say this bird, this hawk, whatever eats this, and we're not going to go all through that because this is not what this is saying. What this is saying is that animals are connected to one another in one way, shape, or form, right? That's what it is. You remove that, and this is the consequence. That is how come there is a particular country that I will not mention by name due to its horrible air quality situation. Humans have become the bees. And of course, with our media, and we love in the United States to talk about environmental situations, but yet our media does not discuss the environmental situations globally. Real bad situations. So bad that people have become the bees. Do your research, ladies and gentlemen. It's not my job to educate you on the whole entire world. But it is your responsibility to become educated. Look it up. It'll be very easy to find. We have great technologies. We have computers. You don't need to go to Encyclopedia Britannica on a bookshelf. You can use your phones to access the World Wide Web. You can use search engines to find where does this occur. Some of you probably already know where. So good luck on the keystone species, but why did they put people to work and become the bees? Because without the actual pollinator, it collapses. So humans are now pollinators. They are not the entire pollinators. I'm sure there has to be some bees, but the bee population is decimated. It's so bad that agriculture has been hurt. So you get people to run around and become the bee. And that's a fact. And we should be talking about that a little more. I think that's kind of important in a country like ours, where that's a very big topic. Environmentalism, right? It's very big in our country, and we need to be talking about those things. So just to give you an example of how important bees are, 1 in every 3 bites of food we eat is pollinated directly or indirectly by a honeybee. Wow. Crazy. Keystone species, ladies and gentlemen. The awesomeness of the honeybee. And we have to protect them. Because boy, let me tell you, without them, we're going to hurt. Food prices will skyrocket. I doubt there are many people here who are going to be wanting to become the bee. And I don't want to be the bee. I will tell you straight up, no sugarcoating it. I do not want to play bee, honeybee. I want to continue here through my education process, educating you guys so we don't have to be the honeybees. So we can take initiatives to help this wonderful species that we have on planet Earth that doesn't ask much from us. It doesn't ask a lot. It's just, hey, leave me alone. Hey, make sure my air quality is okay, because they're very sensitive to air quality. Hey, you know what? Maybe help me out here. There's this massive wasp running around trying to kill me. Like, is there something you can do about it? Hey, there's these massive colonies of killer bees running around, devastating, killing my entire crew. Can you help me maybe? That's where humans come and need to play a role in helping this very important keystone species. So here we take a look at this. 9% of each of these crops pollinated by honeybees. 90% of each of these crops is pollinated by honeybees. What they're talking about here, this here is the market value. Market value. You want to look and you buy something with almonds, right? Anything with almonds, when you buy that mixed nuts and whatever stuff, and they always put a few of the almonds, and you're like, oh, I always dig into the almonds. Why are there a few almonds? Because its market value is a lot. Almonds are highly valued. Apples. Apples don't grow in a lot of places. How many of you been to an apple farm and picked apples? You haven't, because you live in South Texas. That's right. The silence is correct. But when I was in the Midwest, there are plenty. They can handle cold, they can handle snow really well, but they cannot do well with dry and very hot climates. The apple tree does not do well. So I've gone to farms where you pay and you go and you fill up your wagon. You pay them and they don't charge you per the apple. They just one flat rate. You go out there and give you this pole, and it's a really cool pole, and you can you walk through the field and you pick all the apples you want. You can put in your wagon. You take your wagon back out, and they have a bag and everything. And some of the best apples I've ever had in my life. They don't even compare to anything I've ever had here in the store. Because why? Well, in our stores, we have to cut the apples a little green, right? To give them time for ripening through transportation and time on shelf. But something like on a tree, I can get it just perfectly ripe. And like, I want that one, bite into it. Oh, it's so good. And then these farms do things for the kids, activities, little hay rides, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a really, really beautiful thing. But we do not have the climate for, I'm sure someone has some little apple trees around, all right? But in terms of mass production, no. Vice versa, you go up to the Midwest area, where you go up to this area, they don't have fields of grapefruit trees, fig trees, orange trees. No, they don't. Those are more southern, right? California, a little on the dry side here, but Texas, definitely Florida. Florida known for its oranges. So yes, take a look at all these foods, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure some of you today will probably dabble in some of this. You know, these are all actually pretty good, healthy things, by the way, the ones they have listed. And yeah, the bee is involved. So yeah. Food chain, again, nothing linear. We're not going to do that. It says linked sequences of feeding relationships in a community. There are linked sequences of feeding relationships within a community, but to me, they are not food chains. They are within the food web, like that. There are the links. There are the links. This is more representative. This is more accurate than this. Now, are there the situation which the food chain comes into play? It's the rare situation that an organism has a very, very specific diet. What is something that comes to mind that an organism, an animal, only likes to eat one thing? What comes to mind? It's not humans. You can maybe see them in the zoo.
Monkeys?
Not monkeys, because monkeys, you can give them bananas, you can give them fruits, you can give them different things, and they'll eat. This thing looks very cuddly. There are lots of cartoons made of it.
Pandas?
A panda. What does the panda eat?
Bamboo.
Yeah. So, and then also, I believe there's some, I think eucalyptus leaves, but it's a very specific diet. So if you remove that from their ecosystem, they will be impacted. In that case, it's linear. That case, it is very linear. Yeah, so pandas subsist almost entirely on bamboo, eating approximately anywhere, of course, depending on the age of the panda, 26 to 84 pounds a day. So let's say there is a virus that affects. Let's say there is a virus that affects the bamboo, right? The virus that affects the bamboo, and population begins to decline. Man, we got a situation on our hands, right? We have a situation. Then this would be definitely a linear. You could call it a chain, but again, it is not very representative of what occurs in nature. Most organisms have the ability to eat multiple things. Okay, so again, a panda being one of them, very unique, very unique. So that's why I say it's not very common to have that. Again, I'm a toxicologist. I am far, 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 far away from an ecologist. I have expertise in environmental toxicology, but in terms of being an ecologist, for the record, I am far from it. But I use my rationale to say, hey, hawk is not only going to eat, this, right? So again, food web. Some cases there is a chain or linear. A producer or autotrophs that supply energy to rest of the food web. A consumer, autotrophs that eat the producer. So here we go, a secondary consumer, primary consumer, herbivore, and those are the producers. And the honeybees are way back here somewhere, right? That keystone, they should have put the honeybee there. That would have been good. Let's just talk about predators. One organism feeds on another. The other that's being preyed upon is known as the prey. Or herbivores, predation on plants, right? Predation, eating predators of plants. So they're doing predation. It's a herbivore eating some plants there, which may or may not kill the plant. Usually they do not kill the plant. Usually they do not, because that's just not the way nature works. But if you say you get a bunch of goats together and you put them in a particular location and there's plants and there's some grass and they eat grass and they're going to eat everything. And then if you do not incorporate, and they are contained with the fence, right? And you do not incorporate other additional foods, they will deplete the food supply. And they could potentially kill grasses and other plants when placed in a situation like that. There are trophic levels, so feeding levels based on positions of the food web, right? There are, again, this is more linearly. We'll get into its terms of energy. This is a good one for energy, but there are levels in the food web. Energy is lost as it flows through food. That is so true. It's crazy how much energy is lost. We and all other animals are very non-efficient in terms of the energy. So in the food chain, energy flows in one direction from a producer, right? We have our bees, and then we go to our producers. In the passage of energy is not efficient. It is not. And a matter of fact, it is very inefficient. However, as only 10% of the energy for one trophic level ends up stored in the bodies in the next. Only 10%? What? Yeah, that's not good, but it is the way it is, and I don't know why. The result is this energy pyramid that we can kind of study, right? So again, we get we got the bees, and then we have the sun, light traveling at approximately 100, what, 186, 184,000 miles. I think miles per second, per minute, I forgot. Traveling, it takes approximately 8 minutes to get here. And this is the driving force. The driving force for providing energy for them to make sugar, glucose. And that's one of the products of photosynthesis, right? And oxygen. So these little guys are going to eat this, and here you have this, and only 10%, only 10% is going to go into this little guy. The rest is lost to the world of the universe. 90% of the energy is lost to metabolism, heat, and waste between each trophic level. It's just gone. Of course, I say universe to be conservative. At some point, some way, energy, right, as we know, cannot be created nor destroyed, right? Laws of thermodynamics. So that's why I say universe. Earth is part of our universe. It's somewhere. Yeah, most likely we can say some of it went to energy and metabolic waste, all this, all that. Eventually that animal's going to die. And well, where did the other 90% go? If it went to metabolic waste, I mean, it just gets very interesting, right? Energy just keeps transforming into other forms of energy. And that's why I just said universe. Then same thing situation going on here. Boom. Only 10% of the total energy from one organism is passed to the next, right? So you got the 10 here, so you got the 100, only 10 from here. Then what? 1% from here, then you lose 9%, which is 90%. 9% is 99% is 90 of the 10. Just like this one, still is 90%. This is still 10%. It's still. So that's the situation we have. So here we go. Only 10% of energy again. It's just crazy how inefficient we all are, not just humans. The whole system is so non-efficient, and it requires a lot of food consumption on this planet. Now, again, this little picture here. This is what I'm talking about. This is where we talk about ecosystems. We're not there yet. We're in the community, but this is where it's at. Food web, complex interactions of feeding relationships within the communities. Omnivores, they also eat both plants and animals. That would be like a bear. That's a good situation to be in. A bear, Now they don't want to eat just plants because you're not going to get the protein and the fat that the bear would need for winter. But nonetheless, it can eat berries and things of that nature. So, yeah. Very good place to be, like us. I mean, I'm an omnivore. Some people are not. Some people are herbivores. And some people are more like carnivores, they're more on the meat side, right? To each their own. Symbiotic relationships. So let's talk about symbiosis, a relationship in which two different organisms live together or interdependently. So there is different types of relationships. There is the parasitism, the mutualism, commensalism. Let's take a look at these. Mutualism, mutual. There means that it's like a relationship, a relationship between two people, and there are benefits between the two individuals, a friendship, right? Well, similar to bees and flowers, right? The bees get the nectar from the nectar and pollen for food. Well, the pollen kind of gets on them anyway. And the flowers benefit from the pollination, right? It works out. You have other situations where you have some parasitism. So one species benefits and the other is harmed. Look at this. This is not good. These poor bees have a lot of enemies. They have various mites, feeds on the bee adults and larvae. The bee's immune system is compromised and it becomes susceptible to disease. That's not good. These poor guys, they have so many enemies. That's what I'm telling you. We have to be nice to them. There's just so many things trying to take them out. Commensalism. One species benefits and the other is unharmed. So this is the case. I saw a bunch of honeybees at one point. I was real happy to see them. They were hanging out and then they left. Temperature changed and they left. They didn't bother anybody. They didn't sting anybody. They didn't sting any animal. They just did their thing and then they left. And the tree was unharmed. The branch was just, nothing happened. They didn't eat the plant. They didn't do anything, just used it to rest. They stayed there for, I think, 3 to 4 days. And then next time I went to go check up on it, they was like they were never there. Tree wasn't harmed. Now, leafcutter ants, oh man, that's a situation. Now here we go, pinworms and humans. So these pinworms infects humans and feed on food in the human gut. You can deplete you of nutrition. Always important to make sure you try to eat your food and cook your food well, ladies and gentlemen. And the human can suffer discomfort from that. Here's another one here. Look at this commensalism. These here. So you get the ergots feeds on bugs and are what's stirred up in the African water buffalo, and the water buffalo neither benefits nor bother. I don't know if it benefits or maybe it does benefit a little bit. I don't know, but they get stirred up in the grasses and they eat up and they hang out and they sit on that, hang out there. Now, what is happening to the poor honeybees? There's so many things going on with these poor guys. They're getting attacked in all directions. You can have these poor guys. Let's get into it again, I guess. You can have mite infection. You can have fungus infection. Then the poor little guys get AIDS. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Yes, they do. Then they have the paralysis virus. And then they have the IIV virus. Oh, gosh. This is just a bad deal. Bad deal. Then you got this guy over here. And if he doesn't spray properly in the right time, there is a chance that these pesticides, they could kill bees. You're maybe wondering, well, why in the world is this guy going to be doing? He needs the pollinator. I know what you're thinking. I know you're probably wondering, like, wait, well, most people who are in a business understand what they're doing. And they spray and they understand what they're using, the dosage of what they're using. And again, not everybody does, though. Not everyone does. Usually someone, an individual like that, should have a license for chemical applications, at least in the state of Texas. You know, he has to take the exam. He or she has to take the exam to be doing that type of thing. You just can't go around. I mean, if you have your home in your little backyard and you're doing a little spray here with stuff from off the shelf, sure, go to Home Depot, whatever. But once you start doing that with that guy or whoever that boy, girl, man, woman, whatever is doing at an industrial level, you need to know what you're doing because you can really severely hurt bee populations. Now, for those watching, if you're wondering, how can I help? I have helped my neighbors and I have helped family and friends. A lot of people I know want to grow things like tomatoes, little chili plants, chili piquin, chili del monte, little other plants. So they're growing little kumquat trees, whatever. And they begin to flower, right? And I have seen, and I ask people, when do you apply your insecticides? Like if I know someone is applying, I ask when, and they're like, oh, I just, whenever I get a chance. And then I say, well, you need to make sure whatever you do, you definitely apply it way before the plant is going to flower. Because then bees are going to come and they're going to get sick and they're going to die. Definitely no way, no how. Do not put insecticides on a plant or tree that is flowering. You're just creating a death trap for the honeybee. You're literally gonna bring them in and you're gonna kill them. Well, so don't do that, right? So you do it before flowering occurs. Before you have a flower, you do it before that. You need to see how long the residual effect will last. How long? Is it a month thing? If it's going to be a month thing, put it a month and a half. So you give some buffer room for a few days so the bee can come in when it flowers and everything's okay. And you have a nice little community where you're at. So do your due diligence. Make sure you go in and make sure you read, make sure you educate yourself to say, what are you doing? Because once you go by these things, it is now the responsibility falls upon your shoulders to be a good steward of the environment, to not hurt the keystone species. Because you are better off if you go and you apply powdered, whatever it is, or liquid form, or granular form, whatever you do. If you apply that during the flowering phase, might as well just, hey, you know what? Don't do anything, because you're killing off the main thing that's going to produce whatever you're trying, whatever you are desiring. Might as well just kick back, just sit back, get a chair and do nothing, because you're better off doing nothing for that plant, because you're probably putting it because grasshoppers or other bugs are eating it. You are better off doing absolutely nothing. Watch TV or something than putting pesticides, insecticides, and killing your keystone species. Like, let nature deal with it. Let nature deal with it versus you going killing off honeybees. That's just a fact. Not too sure. Hey, I read it. I don't know. Don't apply. Don't risk it. Don't risk killing off your keystone species. It is best to do nothing than kill those bees, because they got plenty of things out there really ready to knock them out. Look at all this stuff, and then we have this stuff, and we're not even getting into their other competitors. Like, I don't even think it really goes much into that. Oh yeah, it does here. So these are competing resources, but no, that's the killer bees. But going back here, what's happening? They're not really including killer bees in here. They're just talking about parasitism. They're not including that humongous wasp that's here. What is the name of that wasp, by the way? Is it a killer wasp? What is that? You guys know the name of that wasp?
I think they just called them killer wasps.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. They're pretty massive, big wasp. So they have those enemies, these poor guys. Little guys have that, and then they have killer bees that are ready to go and invade and slaughter everyone. Yeah. So it's a rough thing being a keystone species, and it's very interesting how you come back here. You come back here to this image and you say, oh, wow, look at that. Wow, that's so important. You're telling me that if you remove this stones, the whole foundation of the ecosystem collapses. Yeah. And then you come here and you see all these things natural. Like man didn't do this. Humans did not do this. Nobody did this. This thing's that was nature. It's crazy how something so important has so many enemies.
I saw this documentary that they said even like the frequencies that they're doing a study that like the frequencies from like all the towers and how we're going to like 5G and all that it might have something to do with like how we've had a decrease in bees because how it's messing them up, the frequencies.
That is very possible. That is a very that's a good hypothesis, right? It needs to be tested multiple times. I don't think doing that type of test would be that difficult to conduct, to be quite honest. It's not like putting a Land Rover on Mars and creating a drone to communicate from Mars back to Earth. I don't think we're looking at that level of complexity to understand if the frequencies are affecting bee populations. And quite honestly, I don't know much about those networks, but I'm assuming that we have some sort of regulatory bodies, because we love regulation in this country, and that they would have submitted something to the Environmental Protection Agency stating that those frequencies do not pose significant risk to bees. However, I am not aware of those things, but I would hope that those studies have already been done. Could be wrong. Maybe they have not. So honeybees have a broad niche. So the space, environmental conditions, and resources that species needs in order to survive, right? Keystone species, we get it. So here we have competing resources. So the hummingbirds prefer sweeter nectar. That's how come Laura says they have that nice little syrupy stuff. They love the sweet stuff, right? So stuff that smells sugary, they're gonna be attracted to that. Oh, little moths over here feed on nectar of flowers that emit strong, sweet fragrances. Over here, butterflies are attracted to red flowers with horizontal pestils. So look at that. So that they like that one. They can get in those. Kind of difficult over here, right? That butterfly is not going to come over here because we have all different kinds of shapes and sizes of the bees. Now here, the bees take nectar from plants and that have brightly colored yellow, blue, and purple flowers. They're able to pollinate most things, just believe me, not just yellow, blue, and purple flowers, but they're able to, they're the awesome pollinators, why they are the keystone species of planet Earth. I am not as important as a honeybee, I can tell you that. If I die tomorrow, the entire agricultural system will continue. If you remove all honeybees tomorrow, our agricultural system will collapse overnight. So I am far less important. I'm not going to say you, but I will speak of myself and say I am less important than that keystone species. Then we have some competitive exclusion principles. So one of the competing species will be driven to extinction. Oh boy. So when species rely on the same limited resource, may display competitive behaviors. Species may outcompete one another for the resource or find a balance between one another depending on their abilities and their behaviors. We do the same thing. We compete for resources. We have been competing for resources and territory as a human species for a long time. A very long time. Early recordings, since humans began to record events, we have been competing for resources in violent ways. And sometimes these species compete for resources in very violent ways, where they will kill the entire colonies so they can dominate the area for the resource. So again, we're not too different in some aspects. Food partitioning, so native bees like the blueberry bee successfully coexist with the non-native bees by specializing on one food that honeybees can't use effectively. So that's a pretty good niche. The one thing that the honeybees cannot really use efficiently, and this one says the blueberry the blueberry bee says, I got it, because, hey, she's kind of specialized. Here comes the generalist, the general one. That's why I was trying to say, I'm like, you're gonna say just, yellow, blue, and purple. I'm kind of like, let's read this here first. Take a look at this. It's generalist, and that's why it makes it the most important species on planet Earth. The honeybee. It really is. It's not the tiger, it's not the lioness, it's not like the Lion King, no. It's the bee. It's the sun, then it's the bee. And then it's water, or however category you want to put them in order. So generalist, foraging patterns, important honeybees can forage over great distances and feed on a wide variety of foods as they feed year-round in warmer climates. They are very successful in their competition with other bees, which may have more limited niches. This one has a limited niche, the blueberry bee. This one's more general. Let's dive into this one here, the Africanized honeybee. Let's see what's going on here. Has a defensive behavior. Killer bees compete successfully because they're aggressive defense of food resources. They chase other pollinators away from available food. I wish they would just chase other pollinators away. They need to be a little more specific. They can decimate and kill the queen. And they go for the queen of this group. They are ruthless. They can be very ruthless in what they do to dominate for resources. What are some other things that can impact populations? Well, hey, this goes back to the good old CAFO situation, concentrated animal feeding operations, right? You guys said, most of you, I would say 90, a good majority of you all forgot about trees. When I thought you were the generation of trees, I thought all of you had planted a tree in your name somewhere. But you were very quick. All of you were very quick. I would say 99% of you, close to 100. I don't think anyone mentioned the importance of trees in that exercise. But all of you are real quick to go from, oh, you know what? We'll just, go from a CAFO to grazing. I know this is a field, but let's pretend it was just grass. Well, you see those trees back there? They're probably here too. Right? So agricultural suburban developments decrease bee populations because of their natural foraging. Where do the flowers go? They're not there. I don't know. There's little things growing here. Don't have no flower. What the hell are they going to do there? Nothing. So it got into habit. Like, where are the flowers here? No, nice green little grass growing on there. I don't see any flowers. I don't even see any flowers over here. I don't see any. I see rocks over here because that looks nice and pretty. I don't even see a flower bed there. I don't know. I don't see. So bees that lived here, they're gone or dead. Going back to the capital thing, that's what you guys suggested. And that awesome exercise, you're like, hey, we should put them out here in the field more. What about the trees? None of you mentioned that one. Again, and if there was one, I still would have remembered, but let's just say 99% never mentioned the importance of trees. So that exercise was a complicated situation. And that's all I wanted you to admit. All I wanted you to do is admit that, hey, you know what? Hey, before I start talking and throwing my voices out there and everything, hey, this is a little more challenging than I thought. Our food system is a little more challenging than I thought. Maybe I shouldn't be listening to that person on that social media blabbing about certain things. Hey, I took a class in biology and I did an assignment, and either direction I went, I found myself banging myself on the wall somehow. Not easy, right, guys? That was not an easy one. Human impacts. These are all the different types. And we have our human impacts as well. And this looks at all the different things that impacting, you know, AIDS virus, certain changes in temperature, fungal stresses, colony collapsing, pesticides, viruses, mites. Oh my gosh, poor guy. They got a lot of things against them. Here's some interesting things. This particular company does a Help the Honey campaign. Break up fields of monocultures with very bee-friendly plants. So meaning they're purposely planting certain plants somewhere along the way to help provide food resources. Use pesticides sparingly. You know, I don't shower it all the time with a bunch of pesticides or insecticides. I rather use the word insecticides. And they say become a beekeeper, right? Well, what do they mean be a beekeeper? That's kind of hard. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean go make the box and have bees? Yeah, that could be one thing. And also it could be just being a good steward, being a good stewardess of saying, hey, look, hey bees, you're living there. You're not bothering anybody. You're living in my old barn. It's okay. You guys can stay there, you know. If whatever the reason, maybe it's a place that you work around or a lot of children are around and they need to go, don't kill them. You know, you can kind of smoke them out. You can do some sort of, you can bring in a controlled container that can control some smoke, and you can do a slow burn and throw some smoke, and they're not going to like it. They're going to go somewhere else. Not going to kill them, but you can maybe move them somewhere else. They'll move, right? Versus killing them off. So here's a summary. An ecological community is made up of the interacting populations of different species. The bees, as I mentioned, we talked a lot about that, right? Keystone species. The most important species of all species is the honeybee. Without them, things collapse. We, as humans, we would be severely impacted. We talked about the difference between a food chain and the food web. Keep that difference in mind. And again, food chain meaning very linear. We gave the example of the panda. It's a very linear situation. Most organisms are not that linear. Multi-directions, okay, of energy. In predation, right, one organism eats the other. The one that's getting eaten is the prey. The other that's doing the eating is the predator. Herbivory is the action of eating plants, right? And we talked about different situations of symbiosis and parasitism and different types of situations in which things can coexist, like mutualism, commensalism. Space and resources. Again, we went back and traveled into time. Early human civilizations fighting with when there was plenty of land to go around. Back then, way more than there was here. But yet, even the ancients were fighting over resources when there was a plethora of resources. And there was so much places to live. It wasn't even highly populated, the planet. And they were yet still fighting and killing one another. That is the history. That is the history. Don't understand it, don't believe it, pick up a book of military history and you can go on and on and on all the way back. Well, since that time, bees have been insects have been competing with other bees for energy as well. And this competitiveness has been happening for quite some time. A colony collapse of a bees, or more specifically, a honeybee colony collapse, they may not have a single cause. It could have a single cause, but that just says the keyword may, so that doesn't exclude that it can't. Meaning, if you want a good colony collapse example, that is the killer bee going in and wiping out the entire colony. That you'll get a colony collapse for sure. If it does not happen like that, or another situation is if you get one of those viruses coming in and it affects a large part of that population of the bees, you could get the collapse. Usually it results in multiple factors, which means here's the word. They say many, I say multiple, right? Same thing, tomato, tomato. Nutrition, pathogens, pesticides, multiple things come together. I think her name was Rachel. She just mentioned something about frequencies. I don't know. I said it's a very good hypothesis, and I hope it has been tested. If it has not been tested, it shouldn't be something that's difficult to do. Any questions on this awesome chapter of community ecology?